Hello, everyone, and welcome to Eminence TV Live, our weekly rundown of tournament cEDH and what's going on in the cEDH community. I'm Scoots. As always, I'm joined by Jamaican Dude. Say hello, Ashani.
Hi.
We'd like to thank our sponsors, Moxfield and the Epic Storm, without whom this would not be so amazing. If you're enjoying Eminence content and would like to see more, please consider subscribing here on Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to one channel a month for free. We'd love if you'd consider using that on us. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/eminancemtg. Your pledge there goes to improve the programs of Eminence cEDH University, among many other things. We'd be so grateful for your support. This week, we are full of excitement as we go back to school at Thraben University. Uh, Mox Masters 2 is coming up. To get to the announcements, Mox Masters 2 is coming up December 3rd, 2022. There are only 35 tickets left. There is a very large prize pool, and it is going to be a banger of a tournament. Silicon Dynasty is coming up January 13th through the 15th in San Jose, California. You can tune in to this channel during those days to see Adam and Shauna, as well as myself and Ashani taking care of some casting duties. And we're super excited for our second event. We have Punt City 2, March 24th through 26th in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. That is a repeat of this year's inaugural Punt City event. Ashani and myself will be there. Come say hello. We're very excited to get that underway. The Cookout, July 28th through the 30th in Atlanta, Georgia. Our first event in the Southeast. Very excited for that. And then finally, Windmill Slam, the return to San Jose, September 23rd to the 25th, 2023. And I really hope that we can see everyone there. I'm sure that is also going to be, as they say, a real wild one. Another important Eminence announcement, Command Tower is now live for shops and TOs globally to use. Memberships go from $5 a month. Shop partnerships are now live as well. Shop partnerships are where a shop buys a reduced cost entry to an Eminence event and gives it away as a reward to the winner of an in-shop tournament. Uh, if you're a shop that's interested in becoming a partner with the Eminence Circuit and you're in the general geographical, not rocks, but places, geographical area of one of our upcoming events, please get in contact at eminence.events. We reserve 30 tickets for shop partners to bridge the gap between large-scale event systems like ours and LGS level scenes. All of this goes back into the community and makes the events better. Importantly, in Silicon Dynasty news, we have reached the 4K level of prize sponsorship, so we're super excited to have another large prize payout for a cEDH event, which is very cool. Phil, would you mind telling everybody who you are and where they can find you on the internet if they've been living under a rock all this time?
Hey folks, I'm Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU. I'm one of the biggest legacy YouTubers, and I've thrown my links in chat there. If you want to follow me on Twitter, whatever, everything's there. Having a website is great. And I've been playing Magic for a decent amount of time. I'm not one of the ancients, but I've been playing since Scars of Mirrodin 12 years ago or so. And I've really broken out into Commander and cEDH over the past 6 months or so, and it has been a delight doing so.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really excited about this. Was so glad that you looked at my message and accepted my invitation. It took some time out of your schedule to hang out with us. One of the things that we like to do during the top of the show is go over some content from the cEDH subreddit, some things that might be silly, and get everybody's feel on them. Um, so just for a few minutes, I'd like to highlight a few pieces of community content. Number one, uh, we have a video on cEDH combos that apparently includes all of them. from what the post says. Are there any that I missed? Covering the best cEDH combos from Ami02. And I will put the link to that in the chat right now if you want to go watch that. Give it a peep. It is 25 minutes long, so good luck. But it has every cEDH combo apparently, and it is time-stamped very helpfully. So if you've ever had questions about cEDH combos, that seems like it'll be a helpful resource. The second piece of community content. Chief, a mentor at cEDHU, and all around good person with a very cute dog, has been on Lamora's Cards and Horrors Learn to Play cEDH series, and they're going over Heliod Ballista, which is a very cool deck that attacks at a very different axis than a lot of cEDH decks. And they sat down with Matt at Lamora's Cards and Horrors and had a really good long talk about how to play Heliod. Now, I know that we have our Grixis lovers in the chat, those who would say that Stacks is bad. There are a lot of you, and I love you like my own children that I don't have. But listen, I wonder. This is an interesting first question. Ashani and Phil both. How do we feel about the placement of Stacks in the cEDH meta right now?
All right, I'll start with this one, as I'm
Okay.
I'm kind of one of the Stacks guys. Like, that's absolutely what my reputation in Legacy is. I've cast tons of Chalice of the Voids off Ancient Tombs in my day, many
Nice.
Thalias.
Yeah.
I think Winota is probably one of the top 4 or so cEDH decks in the format right now. And while it's not full on Stacks Prison in the same way that something like maybe Heliod Ballista might be, it plays a lot of stack pieces that double as ways to trigger Winota. The stacks that it's doing aren't completely locking up the game and grinding it to a complete halt, but it's usually enough of a speed bump for you to get time to play Winota once and maybe twice if you're lucky. I think stacks is a totally reasonable thing to be doing in cEDH. Maybe not the absolute best thing, though.
Yeah. I think I tend to agree with both points, where Winota is one of the top decks in the format right now, and also that it doesn't play like a classic prison deck. It plays more like an aggro deck. I was discussing with someone just last night about how it is weird that there is a Stacks deck where rushing a turn 1 commander is a perfectly acceptable play. But we have an interesting question from the chat before I get to Ashani's answer of Stacks is bad. The chat wants to know what the other 3 decks in the top 4 of the format are.
Probably some combination of the Rog Silas deck that has been championed by Bryant Cook, Blue Farm, and then one of the other blue variants of some kind. You know,
Yeah,
there's a lot of partner mush going on in cEDH.
there certainly
Yeah.
is. Yeah. All right,
Uh,
Ashani, how do you feel about Stacks and cEDH right now?
I think Stacks is a viable option.
Oh my god,
Um,
I wasn't expecting this.
yeah, no, I believe it's a viable option. I believe it has a lot to come down to like piloting skills, like every deck you play in Magic, and you just need to know your meta, know your role, and I think hopefully we can see a slower Stacks mid-range deck take down the tournament. But I think,
I mean, we saw Tivit, right, at the last Chaos event.
well, but I guess till it was mid-range, but it wasn't
It wasn't
truly
Stacks, but it was mid
Stacks
range.
nightmares. Yeah, it was mid-range with a game plan a way to close out the game. But I believe that's what I believe. I just don't think we have found 98 cards um to build the best stacks deck. Listen, I am not here to oh my goodness.
Is Fonzie in the chat right now? Because Fonzie would say it's Thrasios Timna Stacks, like he does every week, and we appreciate him for it.
So if we want to talk some theory for just a second here, I think one of
Mhm.
the current problems with the stacks deck in cEDH is they are very good at not losing the game, but
Correct.
they're not
Not good at
very
winning.
good at winning the game.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I put together Heliod Ballista and played it for a few weeks, and it was very good at not dying. It was very good at stopping my opponents from winning, but the number of times I was 1 mana away from a kill was just too high because the
Yeah.
Heliod Ballista deck usually needs 6 mana to get its kill, more if you want to do it with protection. And I was just totally off that after losing multiple games that I had fully locked up just to not hitting that last land drop.
Yeah. Such is the stacks dilemma a lot of the time. But I think eventually there's going to be something that cracks the nut, and we're just waiting for it to be printed. Let's
I think
see.
it's somewhere in the aether. We just haven't put it together yet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if people put their collective minds together as much as they did for Rogsai for the best stacks deck, I think we would have changed the world by now.
I
Yeah,
agree.
lock me, Charles, and Dr. Levine in a
Right
room
in
for
a
a couple
room.
days, and we'll
Yeah,
figure it out.
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe a sprinkling of comedian, the Winota chief, and we can figure that out.
For me, my last 2 cents will be it'll be Hulk. Hulk is the best hit bear deck, and that is all. I have
Thank you.
nothing else to say.
Thank you for
You're
those
welcome.
2 cents.
Yeah.
Worth the paper they are printed on. Okay, let's see. And the last thing that we have is we've been waiting for this for quite a while, but our boss at Eminence, Mikey, demands that we announce the release of every new Kalua Lua video, and as such, we are doing that now. This week we have Zevlor versus Armix Krom versus Timna Thrasios versus Rograk Silas, which sounds like a Timna Thrasios being very much beaten on by 3 Grixis decks, featuring Poppyphobia Z-Rob, Mikey JH72, and Kalua Lua, uh, with a new opening video, which is
I am the most
wild.
toxic player playing the most.
Uh,
I have not watched it yet,
I
but
believe it is the Cowboy Bebop intro,
oh my
but
goodness.
but with the different characters. Very excited. Playing with Power MTG in the chat, saying ThrabenU in all capital letters. Fellow Winota champion, which means it's got to be Mike on the account. Okay, we have completed the announcements portion of the show, and we are now moving on to the interview section. So we introduced you. You are ThrabenU everywhere that it is relevant. Uh, what is your background with Magic the Gathering, and how long have you been playing? I know you said Scars of Mirrodin previously. So I guess the real question is, how intensely were you playing Magic in your early years, and have you begun? When did you start to take it more seriously?
The answer to that is almost immediately. I don't do anything a little bit.
Okay.
If I get into something, I go all the way down the rabbit hole. So I started playing Magic in the fall of my senior year of college, and in the summer that followed me graduating, I immediately started playing Legacy. Like I basically skipped standard and went directly to legacy.
Go
Like
right in.
I had a standard deck. Like it was a cool standard because like Liliana of the Veil, Snapcaster Mage, and all of that stuff
Mhm.
was starting to come out. But I basically put together Legacy Death and Taxes almost immediately as a budget Legacy deck, and I quickly became one of the like masters of that archetype. I built a website for Death and Taxes. I was the D&T guy for a long time. Although honestly, these days I'm more of a legacy variety content creator. Like I'm
Mhm.
doing videos 5 days a week on my YouTube channel. But I spent a lot of time playing in invitational qualifiers on the SCG Tour or whatever it was called at any given time. So I've played a lot of competitive constructed 60 card formats.
Awesome. Awesome. Next, I'm curious. You played a lot of competitive 60 card Magic. What was it that ushered you into playing cEDH? Was there a specific event, or did you just kind of hear about it? What got
Oh
you
no,
started?
I can totally point my fingers at specific people.
Cool.
So I am a third of the Eternal Glory podcast alongside Bryant Cook and Brian Koval.
Yep.
And the two of them started playing cEDH. And I kind of was like, yeah, maybe I'll dabble in this. And I'm a teacher during the school year. The summer hit, and I had like 2.5 months to do whatever I wanted. And so I used that time this year to get into both EDH and cEDH. Initially doing it as a way to like network with people, try to understand more of the Magic community, understand these formats. And then I realized cEDH was really fun, and I started playing a bit more of it.
Nice. I remember early Brian Koval games where he was playing Jeska, Ishai, Murder Bird, and on the moderately anonymous stream, and just domed me 2 games in a row with the Ishai. And then I just kind of sat there on my thumbs. I remember the early Cook and Koval Halcyon days. So what was the first deck that you picked up when you started playing? It was Heliod Ballista or
No, there was one before that,
Marwyn?
unfortunately.
Marwyn,
I
right?
played Marwyn, the Nurturer, first.
Yeah.
Mono Green Elf, let's go.
I think I
So
remember you playing Marwyn on a Modanon stream, so.
I absolutely did. So I'm going to talk about why I chose this deck, and then I'm going to talk about why I'm not playing this deck
Okay.
anymore.
Not anymore? Come on. Marwyn is still fun.
Look,
So good.
the deck is together. It's gonna sit here.
Okay.
It'll make its appearance on a stream from time to time, but I don't think the deck's tournament ready.
Okay, fair. That's
All
fair.
right. So I have this philosophy. When you try to learn a new format, the first thing that you should play is a highly uninteractive deck that just tries to do its thing and get your opponent dead. And while you are doing that, you can slowly kind of sponge in some of the stuff you need to know about the format. So I had played a lot of Legacy Elves. I owned the deck in paper, so I was very familiar with like Quirion Ranger, Birchlore Ranger, Wirewood Symbiote shenanigans. So I picked up the deck, printed it out, and spent like 4 hours goldfishing it. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to like stream with this. Let's go. And there was this problem though. The deck had too many moving parts, and the deck was not optimized to the same degree that a lot of other cEDH decks were. So I kind of hit up the Discord. I'm like, hey, here's a list of problems that I think the deck has. What can we do to fix these? I got a little pushback initially, but I had some good conversations. But eventually, even after tuning the deck up a little bit, I just realized like it wasn't strong enough if my goal was to win games of cEDH and to like treat it like tournament prep.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
deck is a cEDH deck. I don't want to get that impression. Like it's the right power level, but it's not tier 1. And if I'm going to play this format, I want to be playing the best stuff. I want to have the best chances to win, and Marwyn was not that.
No, not tier 1. I agree.
So what did the what are you playing now compared to Marwyn in the beginning?
So now I am fully on the Winota Joiner of Forces train.
Perfect.
I believe that deck is incredibly powerful, and I think it is a deck that will scale with your knowledge of the format very well.
Yeah.
So I'm an incredibly talented like stacks player. I really understand sequencing, mulliganing, all that sort of stuff. So I picked up this deck very quickly.
Mhm.
And one of the things that I like about it is depending on the pod you are in, you can play the deck entirely differently.
Mhm.
So you've got these branching decision trees of like, do I play a Hate Bear on 1? Do I just play a Legion Warboss on 1 and attempt to slam Winota as quickly as possible? I feel like the deck has a lot of play, is objectively powerful, and rewards knowledge. And
Yeah.
those are checking all of the boxes that I like to see as a competitive player.
I will say one of the things about Winota, and I feel Kinnan similarly, is the abilities always, if you build your deck correctly, you always have a good amount of options off the activation or the triggered ability. And one of the things that makes the deck extremely good is the sheer amount of threats you can play, but also the card selection and the ability to put the extra stuff to the bottom of your deck so you don't see it later. I think that makes Winota very, very strong. It's a combination of card selection and explosiveness. Would you agree, or is there other elements that you think make the deck a contender?
So I agree with that, and I think that's part of it. I think another part of it is the ability to scale your bad hate bear cards into real win conditions.
Mm.
So a lot of times in the traditional stack stacks, you will play out your hate bears or your lock pieces, be it, some sort of Stony Silence effect, a Containment Priest, Drannith Magistrate, whatever, but those don't win you the game. But all of a sudden, when you're playing Winota, you hit Rick Grimes, and all of a sudden, all of your hate bears are slapping your opponents in the face for a third of their life total in one combat.
Yeah.
So I think the card selection and card advantage that you get off of Winota help out a lot.
I think I love The Walking Dead Secret Lair. I know this is a controversial opinion, but I loved how much human support happened in The Walking Dead Secret Lair, and I'm looking forward to the in-universe versions of those cards eventually, so that people can. What is the term? What is the polite term here? People can get over it and play the good cards again. Uh, that's really cool. So you mentioned a lot of experience playing competitive 60 card Magic and now competitive 100 card Magic. So as kind of a subject matter expert on both counts, I'll say now, what, aside from player count, have you found to be the major differences between cEDH and traditional 1v1 Magic?
So I think I've got 3 things for you. Number 1, politics is a thing that matters, and you are a fool if you ignore that. In 60 card constructed, in 1-on-1, you can sit there, play your cards, and never say a word to your opponent and probably do pretty well. If you are going to treat 4-player cEDH the same way, you're going to lose so much more than if you start talking. If you start doing some humming and hawing, if you start trying to make this narrative of oh, this person is the threat. Oh, can anyone counter this? Oh, I don't have a hate bear that's going to deal with this. This is this huge problem. And then all of a sudden it's all right, Winota, trigger 4 times, bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to get the table to work in your favor is very important.
Go ahead, Shawnee. What were you saying?
No, I'm just loving that. It's a different
That's
vibe I got
exactly what I
from.
was about to say.
Yeah, cause when I first met Brian Cook, that was not his first initial. He was like, I despise table talk and
Play your
blah 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 blah
cards.
blah. Play your spells and whatever. And then he was like, he's now leaning towards actual conversation, and this is great. I love. That's one of the reasons I love CDH is just the political side and the mind games,
Yeah.
and some people do it better than others, and that's the joy that it brings to me, and I'm glad we share that joy with at least I believe we do. Do you enjoy the political side of it?
Oh yeah. I enjoy being a conniving little man and setting up traps. It's very fun.
Yes.
It doesn't always work because the people who
No.
know me well are like, do not trust Phil. Do not trust Phil. He is a liar. Well, not a liar. He's a conniver. He's a schemer.
He's telling untruths right now. Yeah. I was gonna say the same thing about Bryant. I've noticed it from the initial play your spells phase to now. The other day, he paused a game for 3 minutes to talk about why we should deal with this threat in this manner, and how someone had to absolutely counter this. And I've really loved that evolution in player skill and the noticing that cEDH is such a political game. You don't have one opponent. You have three teammates but three opponents at the same time, all trying to like not let someone win, and the political aspect is super important, and it's interesting to hear the difference in opinions that we've had on the show regarding that.
Yeah,
So
Bryant is great, but he's definitely prickly sometimes. I say this as someone who works with him every day.
That's a lovely word to describe him. Prickly. Yes.
one of the things that Bryant has said to me is, "You have the capacity to play good decks. Why don't you?" Which is like a thing that he said to me mid game. So I get it. We're from geographically almost the same place, and it's that sarcasm that is fairly innate to like this area. But yeah, I love it. So you've noticed you enjoy the political aspect, and that's very cool. Is there an element of the EDH and cEDH experience that you dislike comparatively?
Yeah. Can we linger on the previous question for a minute though? Because I've
Yes,
got another
absolutely.
thing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the most interesting things about cEDH, and something that's not going to be very obvious to 60 card players immediately, is how much your seat position and pod composition change how you are going to play a game and changes your your mulligan
Hmm.
decisions. Because like you might know, like I need a turn one answer to this deck
Yeah.
versus like, oh, this table is super counter magic light. I don't have to worry about going off with protection. I can just try to go off. I think that is extremely interesting. And I'm still working out some of that, like how fast is too fast, how slow is too slow, how do I make up for the fact that I'm in fourth position when I'm playing kind of an aggro stacks deck?
Yeah.
There's really interesting questions.
One of the people that I look to for advice on this is Dan Moderately Anonymous MTG. Their mulligan know-how is fairly off the charts. I think I've seen them win on a mull to 1 before. Like I've seen them win on mulls to 2 and 3, and I love their philosophy of just keep mulliganing until you have a couple cards that feel like worth playing. Uh, I think seat order plays a huge factor in things, and along those lines, I think knowledge of the other decks at the table and seat order are extremely significant. Like you can have the greatest hand in the world, all your artifact acceleration and a wheel of fortune to fire off after you've played it all out, but if the deck before you plops down a collector roof on turn 1, you've made a poor choice. I think that there's so much nuance in the early game, and that a lot of cEDH games are like somewhat decided before the first card is put on the table. Is a take that I would say. But
I believe if someone is winning games from a mull to 2 and a mull to 1, he needs a different pod. That sounds like some bad players there, but that's all I have to say,
I was
Scott.
in
Well,
the
you know,
Multi One pod, and you're being mean to me on purpose. I get it. It's fine.
yeah, yeah, I am.
Yeah,
I am.
it's totally fine. I get it.
Okay.
I understand. I deserve it even. Um
Yeah.
All right. So returning to the last question you asked now, is there anything I
yes.
dislike about cEDH? And there is. And I'm gonna fire off a hot one here. I
Floor is
think
yours.
the cEDH community does a terrible job with their deck names. And I believe the cEDH community is very unintentionally gatekeeping by doing so. When you are wanting to grow your format and you want people to take your format more seriously and you want your format to be accessible to people, you need to stop using cute names like Blue Farm, and you need to use descriptive names for your decks. And there's two reasons for this. Number one is the player accessibility. Number two is search engine optimization stuff. You want people to be able to find your stuff very consistently. You want high Google results, and using those nice descriptive deck names is going to help out a lot. And I come from a format where we have terrible deck names. I come from the format of Death and Taxes
Yeah.
and Nick Fit and Tin Fins. But you bet every single video description I ever do, and usually in the title, I also have a descriptive name of what that deck actually does.
Yep. I've heard this sentiment a lot. And at first I strongly disagreed with it, but over time have come to realize that if I were to try and start playing cEDH right now, because of how scattered the resources are, if I were to try and figure anything out right now, I would be completely lost looking at like the chimichanga zone instead of like Rograk Silas Turbo Ad Nauseum. Like that yeah. It's it hurts because I'm someone who prides myself on funny deck names, but it's real. It's true. Ashani, how do you feel about deck naming conventions?
I agree with it also. If we want newer players to be able to come into our format and understand conversation that is happening, we definitely need to do that. We should be Timna Crom, mid range and nauseum, or a
Okay, never mind. Oh boy, I got some weird hearing, and I thought you said Tim McGraw, mid-range ad nauseum.
McGraw. Nice, nice. But yes, I hope I didn't say that. I think I said Timna Crom. But anywho, yeah, I do agree with that statement of it. I do enjoy the cute nicknames also, but if we're wanting to be for the community purpose, we definitely should get away from them.
So, Phil, how do we, in your opinion, how do we balance the desire to be like fun? It's a on top of everything, we call it competitive EDH, but it's a fun format, and part of that is the whole experience, fun deck names, fun things like that. How do we manage the desire to be fun? How do we balance it with the desire to not gatekeep and be informational at the same time?
So I think, and this is going to be kind of a weird take, maybe. I think there's actually two different cEDHs. I think there are people who play cEDH casually who want to have this experience of incredibly high level, like EDH gameplay. And
Yeah,
then I think there are the people who are playing cEDH to optimize the format, to break the format, to go to tournaments and win the tournaments.
Yeah.
And I think part of the difficulty in like dealing with cEDH content is making sure that you're doing things in a way that work towards both groups.
Hmm.
yeah,
All of your people who are, the effective tournament grinders, content creators of this format are going to understand all of the jargon and terminology. And all of the people who are casually coming into the format or who play once a week,
Yeah.
once a month, once every couple of months aren't. And I think catering towards the larger audience here is probably what leads to the best results for the whole.
Okay. Yeah. I I can agree with that. Um, Snork did it in the chat saying something that I think kind of speaks to that. That there's a gap between personal decks that are tailored to your meta and then putting decks out there for learning folks like on the DDB. So perhaps a way that we could try is maybe have the DDB, because it's a resource that people go to first. We can standardize deck names on there, perhaps. Like, and with their headings specifically, they're doing that now. But maybe it would be good to encourage submitters to give their decks relevant names instead of Salsa Fight 2.0.
All I'm saying is that the Marwyn primer, when it was still on there, was named something like "Welcome to the Elvish Parade."
Okay, all right. I've also seen Mommy Marwin as well. Um,
Uh,
well, we could.
Before we get into weird mommy
Yeah,
Marwyn stuff,
yeah,
let's
yeah,
move on to the
yeah,
next
yeah.
question.
We're going to the next one. Uh, so since you've been playing cEDH and EDH, how has your attitude regarding these formats and subformats changed?
So initially, I viewed cEDH as something that I was going to play a handful of games of from time to time with no real intention to ever play in a tournament or anything like that.
Yeah.
And now the cookout in Atlanta is on my schedule over the summer,
See you there.
and I intend on going to that event to win it or to do very well. And so at some point in the not too distant future, I'm going to get myself a pod or probably multiple pods of players, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to put, 100 hours into trying to break Winota or whatever deck it is that I'm going to be playing at that time. And I'm going to put some of that like constructed, rigorous testing for events into this format in a way that I never really expected to as of a few months ago.
Yeah. I will say one of the differences between cEDH and EDH as far as testing is that I have noticed is that in 60 card decks with 4 ofs, it's fairly easy to discern, like, to figure out what the difference is going to be between one card and another card because of the amount of times that you see it in your testing games. Whereas with 100 card singleton decks, it generally requires, I like to do like 30 games on a card change before I change it again because you just don't see the card that much. And if you're not tutoring for the card, you can't really ever be sure how that testing is going.
I think a lot of cEDH deck building decisions are done based on gut because I think it's very hard to do them with data.
Yeah.
So for example, when I built my Winota 100, I had a ton of questions. I had a Discord call with Mike from Playing with Power at Sad Robot Alters, and we for an hour just really went in on individual card choices, talking about what we shouldn't be playing. I was giving him advice on some tech from Legacy that I had played in other Winota decks there, and we walked away with a deck list that we felt really good about. But at the same time, like, do we have any sort of confidence in some of those exact numbers? Like, do we need the red elemental blast? Is that better than the card we took out? How good is Memnite? There's a lot of things that it is going to take eons to really and truly optimize out.
Bryant is in the chat now saying he didn't realize that you were the guest, and he wants me to ask what the nicest part of Tasha's is.
Obviously, her hideous laughter.
Excellent. 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 One of my favorite spells in D&D 5e as a bard. So we've already answered my next question, which is what you're playing now. You're playing Winota, and I'm very excited to see how your testing goes. As far as your testing towards optimization of the deck, can we look forward to seeing either a video or some written content after the tournament is over regarding your testing and things that you've done?
Absolutely. So, as of right now, I'm a teacher. Over the summer, I have an incredible amount of time, and I expect over the summer that I will transition into formally doing some EDH or cEDH content of my own. I don't know what exactly that's going to look like yet. I have kind of some ideas sketched out for the future, but short answer, yeah, there will be something.
Cool. Bryant wanted you to know that you're VV, smart, and handsome. Direct quote. There you go. Perfect. So I have an interesting question for you regarding cEDH and the way that it gets played. I know that Bryant, MTG the Epic Storm in the chat, has posted some cEDH on Magic the Gathering Online. How do you feel about the viability of Magic the Gathering Online as a client for playing 1v1v1v1 games?
Awful.
Okay.
I say this as someone who, for all of its flaws, plays Magic Online daily.
Yeah.
Like, all my content that I make with it as of right now is through Magic Online. But I think logistically speaking, with the client the way that it is right now in November of 2022, the client is not super well set up for 4-player games. I have hopes that Daybreak Games will make some changes to make that a little bit more seamless in the future. They have done some fantastic jobs of bringing cards to the program that weren't currently there. But there's some of the popular cEDH cards, I believe, that aren't even on Magic Online yet. So that's been a problem with some of the 60 card formats as well.
Hopper. I've known. Yeah.
Yeah, we just less than a week ago, finally got the white initiative cards to Magic Online, and now they're breaking Legacy. Oh, maybe not breaking, but they're very good in Legacy as well as Vintage.
I was playing some Pauper, and I was trying to get the initiative cards, and they were not on there, and then they were banned.
Yeah, the initiative was too much for Pauper. It's probably acceptable for Legacy, but it's real good, and Bryant is gonna hate it because the initiative cards usually come alongside all sorts of fun stacks, lock pieces. Asterisk, the fun is for me.
Love that. I can't wait to see the Epic Storm playing against some more initiative craziness. Big fan of both of those things, initiative craziness and Storm. So very much looking forward to. Speaking of the Epic Storm, and ThrabenU also, thank you for the Amazon Prime subscriptions. I appreciate it very
Can't be outdone
much.
by my podcast co-host, you know.
we
Absolutely.
gotta get Brian Koval in here, and he'll give some gift subs, and then we'll really throw the gauntlet down. Let's see. MTGO is great for 1v1, but the only EDH decks I play, and they're all sorcery speed only because the games take way too long if I can't F6. That's a very funny opinion regarding that. There are certain things like the time clock that I do like, the turn clock that I do like for cEDH, but I feel like it would be impossible to manage, and that the maximum clock you can put in for Moto is perhaps a bit short for a cEDH game. But I do like the idea of people having to play their turns fast. And
I
I'm
also
wondering. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I also think that cEDH without the spoken aspect really isn't as
Yeah.
good. Like, you can get on a Discord call, but Magic Online doesn't currently have any sort of voice chat integration, and it probably shouldn't, honestly.
Yeah.
I've gotten some spicy messages in text chat.
No doubt. No doubt. Oh, it's an hour per player in open play, so maybe my opinion is incorrect, but or my thought was incorrect. So we have kind of covered this, but just to get it in words, how do you feel about the viability of EDH as a competitive tournament format? And I will sidebar that and say, what do you think needs to change in EDH for it to become a more relevant competitive format as well?
Okay, I'm actually going to start answering this question by talking about casual EDH, but
Okay.
I'm going somewhere. So, for casual EDH, cultivating a pod is super important. Like, you want to get everyone on the same power level with the same expectations so that everyone is going to have a good time. And if you do that, a regular game of casual EDH is very fun. cEDH largely eliminates the need for those rule zero conversations because everyone knows what the expectations are. Everyone knows what you are there to do, what power level you're playing at, like that you're there to win, that you're not making plays out of spite, all that sort of stuff. And so I think cEDH gets everyone on the same level in terms of mindset.
Mhm.
I think, though, there's a lot of growth for running cEDH events, and I think we're going to see a lot of growing pains over maybe the next year or so as people really figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, we have 20 years or so of competitive experience, or I guess this is Magic 30 now, right? So we have
Yeah.
like 30 years of running competitive events for like draft and 60 card constructed. We know what we're doing. We have these great rules documents for it. And tournament EDH is really just, you know, in its infant stages.
Yeah.
And I expect that once our tournament organizers and judges and players are all on the same pages, things are going to go really well. But I know at Oktoberfest this weekend, for example, there was one round where top 32 had been announced.
Mhm.
It was 3 hours past when that announcement had happened,
Yeah.
and they were still waiting on an untimed match.
Yeah.
There's stuff like that people have to figure out. Like, that is not gonna fly for like venue reasons,
Yeah.
for like retaining your players over time. I think there's a lot of stuff like that that people have to figure out, but The pairing algorithms and stuff seem to be getting a lot better. Although it's a little weird to have 3 people playing for top 40 or whatever your equivalent is, and then one person in that pod has like no wins. There's some odd things that feel off to me as a tournament player. But I like a lot of the improvements that I'm seeing.
There are some things as far as like if you're 0-4 and you're going into round 5, you have no tournament hopes, maybe you drop. Like there are things like that, like player etiquette and things like that that aren't quite there yet too. And then as far as like TO stuff, the pairing algorithms could use like could use some maybe better selection. I agree. There's growing pains that are going to happen. Um and I'm super interested to see with the advent of actually our software package Command Tower. There's It's going into the hands of a lot more people, so we'll have a lot more testers for that kind of thing. And I'm super excited to see what testing yields in that regard. Um, so there are things about tournament structure, tournament organization that you feel are going to be growing pains. Are there any areas as far as like deck selection uh or trends that you think are going to be problematic for cEDH tournaments? Like I guess my question is I've seen people bring like rogue decks to modern events and do very well, and the same happens in cEDH events. But do you think that over time that rogue decks dilute the competitive environment, or do you think that they're necessary for it? I guess I'm just curious.
I think one of the things that makes formats interesting is that you're not always playing against the same 2 or 3 decks. If you look at a legacy tournament right now, there's maybe 4 or 5 decks that are probably the best decks that people are going to play all the time, but you can't show up to a tournament expecting only to have to beat those decks. So, kind of the variety of things that people are going to bring to the table and kind of their personal deck building quirks, their personal play styles, that has an influence on the events. And I think people showing up to play these events slightly more casually is going to keep things from getting too inbred. Like I know at the event this weekend, there was some Hazazon
Yeah,
Tamar deck
top
that
16.
top 16, and like if you ask literally anyone like, hey, is this a viable cEDH deck, everyone would have said no,
Yeah, it was Shaper
it's
of
not.
Sand, right? The new house is on. Yeah, I looked at it and I was like, huh, what
Yeah,
is
it was
this?
a difference.
What does it do? I guess it top 16's tournaments is the answer to what it does, but uh it
So
So
plays.
I
I go ahead.
Okay, I don't think over time we are only going to see people play the top 3 or 4 decks. I think that desire to do something different, that desire to kind of build your own thing, that desire to try and attack the metagame, I don't think that's going anywhere. I think we will better be able to identify what the best strategies are, but I don't think that means that everyone is going to shift to them.
Do you think that here's a hot button question in cEDH right now. Do you think that tournament results are a fair metric of what is good and what isn't good in cEDH?
The meme answer to this that I see repeated on Twitter all of the time is that good players win events. And deck selection can give you a push, but ultimately, the players who know their stuff, know the format, are playing a good to great deck are going to put up results more consistently. I think the data is a great starting point, but given how few cEDH decks, or sorry, how few cEDH events there are in the grand scheme of things, and given how few matches most people playing the format play, I think it's hard to say the data says this. Based on the data, I will play this with as much certainty as you can in 60 card constructed formats. And even in the 60 card constructed formats, a lot of times you aren't really truly reaching a sample size that gives you any statistical significance.
Mhm.
So you use the data to make decisions and make informed decisions.
Ashani, what were you saying, bud?
So I was asking, as a tournament grinder, as a tournament player, what could some of the things cEDH or cEDH players could do so we don't have these long games, like you were stating, like 3 hours after the timer, there is still an on-time game going on. What could be some of the steps we could cEDH players could take to avoid that?
So in 60 card constructed, when it goes to time, there are 5 additional turns. At the end of those 5 additional turns, the game is considered a draw. But you doing something like that in cEDH is harder because now you have 4 players worth. So do you give everyone 1 additional turn? Do you give everyone 2 additional turns? Do you set a time limit? If you set a time limit, you start looking at stalling.
Yeah.
What if there has to be a winner for this pod in order to break into our top 4? I don't know that I am the person to give you the authoritative answer there.
Fair.
I've heard some interesting ideas, like a doomsday clock. Like, okay, at the beginning of your upkeep, every upkeep you get an emblem that deals 1 damage to you or something like that, and it's cumulative. So like the game does deterministically end, but then certain decks are going to have more of an advantage than others. Your ad nauseum deck gets noticeably worse, for example.
Well, give us
Um,
your opinion. Like there's something set already. Like if after the timer has ended, for time games, everyone has a turn, and after those turns, they get into the draw. But like for what what would you say? Like, there's a big thing for slow play. Like, Magic players on a whole like to him and haw on their turns, no matter how simple the turn is. Like, I'm just asking on your opinion, what could you tell players as a veteran tournament player?
So I used to be a level 2 judge, and as from the judge perspective, the thing that I want to do is keep the tournament going. In a constructed tournament, if there's one set of players left playing a game and they are holding the remaining 1,000 players from playing their games, like it's a problem. So I would like to, do something like, all right, you each get one additional turn once time is called, or it's a draw or something like that. Something that quickly ends the round and gets us to round turnover. But this does kind of get into issues when you are kind of cutting into a top 4, especially for the final round. So I don't know what the clean answer there is when there has to be a winner.
Yeah.
But I am fine with a ton of people racking up draws, because in cEDH tournaments, draws still give you points.
Yep. Cool. Excellent. Um, we are going to see you at the cookout, which is very exciting. Uh, after based on your experience there, when that happens, would love to have you back on at a later time to get your thoughts, your breakdown on how it went, how the event went. Will we see you playing in any of like the online tournaments in the meantime?
I'm not going to say the answer is a hard no, but I spend a lot of time making my
Yeah.
content. The YouTube channel eats up a lot of time. There may become a time in the not too distant future where I do end up going full time, and then my availability opens up a
Yeah.
lot, and I can do a lot more of these things that I want to do instead of that I air quotes have to do.
Yeah.
But expect in the month or so prior to this event for me to just like curl up in a cave somewhere with a handful of cEDH grinders and just say like, all right, we're gonna try to break this format. Let's play some high powered games.
Yeah.
So there
Excellent.
will be real tournament preparation.
Excellent. Well, I just want to, before we get to the final 2 questions of the night, I just want to thank you so much for your time and give you one last chance to plug yourself and tell us what you're excited about in the coming months.
So again, I'm Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU. I'm making YouTube content 5 days a week under the handle ThrabenU. In Legacy right now, I'm really excited about exploring the initiative mechanic as a bunch of those cards finally made their way to Magic Online, and I'm doing my best to break those. Doing a pretty good job so far. I probably have around a 75% win rate with initiative decks so far, which is really solid. And in the more distant future, I'm going to be looking forward to kind of playing both some casual EDH and cEDH on stream as I have the chance to do so. Not my own stream, but I like guesting. It's a lot of fun. It's a good way to, have the Friday night Magic experience without going to the game store.
Awesome. Speaking of Friday Night Magic, we have a gameplay stream on Fridays with Adam and Shauna, so maybe we can get you scheduled on there if you're interested.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I'll pass that on. The last thing that I have to say before I ask the final two questions, because as everyone knows, they are the best questions of the program, is that Silicon Dynasty is happening January 23rd through 25th in San Jose, California, and there is a literal 13th through 15th, excuse me, I got the dates wrong. January 13th through 15th, Silicon Dynasty. It is a 4K prize pool, and there is a gun to my head right now. I have to say that several times. Last two questions of the show. Number one, what is the thing that is not Magic the Gathering that you are extremely passionate about right now?
Dungeons and Dragons. I have
Hell yeah.
I have a weekly campaign that I play with my girlfriend and a handful of other local people. I am currently playing a Fiend Warlock. I have a pact with Mephistopheles.
Excellent.
And in my previous session, I killed off my familiar in order to save one of my fellow player characters. So it's been an emotional roller coaster, and it has been very fun.
I'm currently a forever DM, but I think I think someone else in the group is deciding to DM, and I get to play a character again soon, and I'm very excited.
I'm very happy for you.
Thank you. The last question, the most important question, the question that I did not send you ahead of time because I need your right now thoughts on it. Phil Gallagher, ThrabenU. What is the sexiest soup?
Blue soup.
Blue soup. Okay, we're going to leave it at that. Hey, everybody, have a really nice night. I have been Scoots. You can find me on Twitter at It's Me Scoots or on the Eminence MTG account. Ashani, where can people find you? Anywhere?
You can find me on Twitter as Ashani and Discord as Jamaican Dude.
Excellent. And on Facebook as his real actual name. Bye, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel with another wonderful guest. We're out.